Good morning, everyone. Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise that my latest video got a file corruption and was not able to be posted because, oh, what a 24 hours has gone by and so much information just floods out that, my video would be lacking. And certain things also had changed from what it had happened 24 hours prior. Certain information is no longer relevant or has to be redacted, or not even redacted because certain news outlet is standing by it. This particular instance, what I'm referring to is that in the other video, which file corrupted, so it's not really a video, I had mentioned the whistleblower being under federal protection. It turns out, now this was reported on 60 Minutes. It turns out, though, the lawyer for the whistleblower said that they misinterpreted what was said, that it wasn't under the whistleblower wasn't under federal protection yet, or congressional protection just yet, because because of the rigmaroles that was going on. But the strange thing is that 60 Minutes is standing by the report saying that yeah, he or she is. So that's a side tangent on its own. But what would we learn from this continuation of the impeachment inquiry involving Ukrainian-Whistleblower-Gate? I guess that's the best way we can call it at the moment. It turns out that the story itself is growing exponentially and globally, as we now find out that Mr. America First, who cannot own a stitch of clothing that wasn't made outside of the United States, our president, Mr. Trump, has the need to outsource assistance from other countries to deal with his own personal political machinations. He sends people out to Italy to garner information on Hillary Clinton and her emails. They're apparently going to be talking to 130 of her former staff for some reason. It also turns out that the Trump administration also asked the leaders of Australia to assist them in vilifying the Mueller report. Okay. So, isn't it just interesting to anyone else that he just can't bring himself to have Americans do research for him? And it's just like so much information to go into, and it's just what do you mention and what do you omit, or what are you going to remember, or what are you going to forget in a single video? And it's just astounding. It's those who are not as deeply immersed into the politics as a lot of us wonky political geeks are. Pretty much everything the whistleblower report that we've known is confirmed in the White House readout, their transcript of President Trump's conversation with President Zelensky. And a lot of things are floating around that are both conspiracy theories that are debunked. One of the ones that is still circulating is that Joe Biden had forcefully ended the career of that Ukrainian prosecutor. He pressured Ukraine to drop that prosecutor because he was investigating Hunter Biden and his involvement on the board of that natural gas company in Ukraine, the largest one there. It turns out that prosecutor wasn't investigating Hunter Biden. For 3 to 5 months after the fact did he get removed. And further deep dives into this portion of this scandal. Deep dives meaning, cracking open a web page or reading a paper or, using your eyes, pretty much. real scientific work here. But you find out that this particular prosecutor was removed not just because at the behest of Biden's or at the behest of the Obama administration, but of the entire international community that watched this guy's career and noticed that this particular Ukrainian prosecutor was pretty soft on corruption, not hard on corruption, and has some inklings with Russia. Now, a reminder of what's going on in Ukraine is that for the past few years, the Ukraine stability has been in jeopardy by Russia, by Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump's pen pal and friend. In between actual physical military actions that Russia is doing in Ukraine, on its eastern side of Ukraine, and not only in 2014 did it annex Crimea from Ukraine, the Russians are also using influence through various people in Ukraine itself to destabilize it, to try to bring up pro-Russian fervor, which would ultimately, I guess, lead to Ukraine losing its independence and falling back into the Russian lap. So we assist Ukraine with military and financial aid in order to keep it propped up, keep it independent, and keep it stable. Our Congress each year allows a certain amount of money. At this point, the amount is about $400 million. The $250 million was allotted by Congress, $150 of it going through the State Department, and with that monies, the Ukrainians would then take that monies and buy from us, military munitions for its defense. Well, we know from the history of the transcripts, so it's not really rehash it, that Zelensky asked for Javelin defensive anti-tank missiles, and from that point of the conversation, that's when Trump asked, like you to do us a favor though, and the whole conversation slants away from the Ukrainian defense that the president was trying to secure, the president of Ukraine, to do us a favor, to dig up information on CrowdStrike, which was a debunked conspiracy theory that somehow it wasn't Russia that was interfering with the 2016 election, but it was Ukraine, on the benefit of the DNC and Hillary Clinton. And George Soros' name is thrown in there because he's the liberal boogeyman, and that somehow they assisted Hillary Clinton in losing the election. But that's the conspiracy theory that they want the Ukrainian president to look into, and also, by the way, look into Hunter Biden and that debunked nonsense conspiracy theory. And in order to assist with that, they would like President Zelensky to work with Rudy Giuliani and the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr. Now, the sort of a background in this is that for official intergovernmental workings in terms of assistance of foreign powers on certain issues, there is an actual established procedure to go through the different departments for official channels to go through to investigate things between countries. It goes from the State Department, Department of Justice, and that particular government's apparatus of Department and State, etc., etc. There is an actual establishment of procedures to do this. And Trump didn't want to do any of that. So Trump just wanted Zelensky and to assist with his personal lawyer and the Attorney General, who he treats like his personal lawyer, to dig up dirt on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. You know, those the righteous, clean, and innocent things a president would do. Having a foreign power investigate a political rival at the time. Irony being is that this call was being done July 25th, a couple of days after the Mueller report, or the Mueller testimony, rather, excuse me. As we explained what was at stake with Ukraine, that they need this assistance from us. It is a lifeline to keep them afloat. It turns out, through media reportings, that President Zelensky's call with Trump, the emphasis that he has to play ball with listening to Trump wanting him to do an investigation on the Bidens, that was mentioned prior to the call, so they knew that this was going to be the main event of this conversation. It'll be congratulations, and then the light stuff on corruption, and we'll listen to what you want, but quid pro quo, Clarice. You get what you want, we get what we want. You help us, we help you. Now, for those defenders of Trump that seem to want to be obtuse upon how Trump operates, as if none of us has been paying attention to him for the past 2+ years, is that he's not going to specifically say anything. He's not going to say on a transcript, oh, by the way, we'll get you the missiles if you go and investigate the Bidens to our satisfaction, and then you can have the funding. No, he's not going to do that. For some of you that you and I have conversations about this stuff, we acknowledge that despite Trump's outward intelligence deficit of how he articulates himself in what he does and his impulse control problems, what he is that he is a master savant of perception as long as he's controlling the narrative. He's been doing this for decades. Prior to becoming president of the United States, he, in order to prop himself up in the 80s as being this rich man that goes out and does all these wonderful things and has all these wonderful properties and gets into all these like little intrigues that in order to garner people's interest, he would control the New York media apparatus in order to make sure people got him in the headlines in newspapers and magazines. I mean, hell, he sometimes pretends to be his own publicist, calls himself John Barron, and would call in about whatever sexual exploit he had. Jeez, I wonder why Barron Trump is named Barron. Anyway, so he's not going to say anything directly. However, there's enough pattern that we can divine for his public persona as president for as long as he's been president, and even during the campaign, that we pretty much get the gist. Michael Cohen, in his testimony, pretty much said it specifically that he's never going to order you to do something, but he wants you to do something. He's just not going to directly order it to you. He's going to opine, he's going to lament upon the good old days of, whatever happened way back when something happened then. Oh, I miss when something happened then. Yeah, it would keep it vague, but the point was there. I mean, this is why people say he talks like a mob boss. Because especially those mob bosses who did have a public angle, like the Gaudis, who was a media darling because he would always be ready to stand there and have conversations with like reporters, walking in and out of court. Someone who's very affable and very presentable or approachable like that. No matter whatever he said could be nowhere near the dark side of the moon of the truth, but nonetheless, he would do that, and Al Capone would do that. And Trump does it. Trump will Trump won't tell you to do something specific. What Trump will do is that he will mention it, he will imply it, and then he'll expect you to draw your conclusions towards it. But it's an interesting thing where people want to be that obtuse and seeing what is in black and white in the transcript and still refuse to connect the dots because they don't want to connect the dots. They don't want to acknowledge that the person that they've been backing is more corrupt than the person that they hated for more than 30 years, Hillary Clinton. That, they picked Trump as a lesser of two evils. Really. And we get through this, we get through the impeachment inquiry announcement, and what does Trump do? To prove how innocent and how pure and how clean he is of all wrongdoing, he goes on a tirade. He goes, he once again, one of these implied things when he's at a donors meeting, and there's an audio clip of him lamenting of the old days of what they used to do to spies and traitors. When he talks about the whistleblower, he talks about people that gave the whistleblower the information. They're more like spies, and we used to do things differently back when we were smart. When we would deal with spies, we don't seem to do that anymore. For those who do not know what that means, is that treason, as he was implying with that, treason is punishable by death. Okay. Well, we weren't done yet, were we, with these hand flailings? It's because then he accuses and wants the Democrat leader, is it the Intel Committee? I think so. Adam Schiff. He wants him to be arrested for treason, for being the spearhead of the impeachment inquiry. So that's treason. Impeachment is part of our government. It's not really treasonous. But we're not even done yet. Because then what else does he do? He quotes a batshit insane pastor who said that if Donald Trump was successfully impeached and removed by the Democrats, that there would be civil war. He retweeted that. And I love the defenders saying that, coming out to defend this and going, oh no, it wasn't him saying that. It wasn't him saying that. He was just retweeting it. Why the fuck was he retweeting it then? In order to imply that his people, his supporters, would rise up and commit a insurrection in order to protect their president. You sometimes wonder why people will walk on burning coals for this guy. I mentioned a few videos back that I think there's a lot of people who voted and supported for Trump, initially because of not liking Hillary Clinton and anything but Hillary Clinton. But the thing is, as Americans, we can't be wrong. It's an ingrained thing. I mean, I possess it, and I see other people possess it, even though if they don't want to admit to it. But I mean, we have this thing that even going back to our colonial days, before our explorer days, where our Europeans shows up in the West Indies and mistaken the natives as Indians. 500 years plus later, we're still calling them Indians, mostly, because some people will go the Native American route and say, "Oh, they're Native Americans," and or be really really respectful and just say them by whatever tribe they represent. But certain certain Native folk just don't give a shit. You can call us Daisy if you want, as long as you respect us. But be that as it may, we can't we can't perceive ourselves to being wrong. You know, it took over 500,000 people to die in a civil war, 601,000 at least, to die in an American Civil War in order for people to admit that, maybe slavery was wrong. That peculiar institution that people were fighting and dying in order to preserve. An institution that the majority of the Southern soldiers was not taking part in because they were too poor to have slaves, but nonetheless was fighting for that right, for that state's right to have slaves. We go from Civil War to the 100 years of Jim Crow and segregation and separate but equal, but no equality, obviously. I mean, you can say that majority of that is all cleared up, and somehow because magically the election and re-election of Barack Obama fixed that racism thing on up. No, it's because he was a great spoken, intelligent person that was fitting at the time. But but somehow he's president, so no more racism. A lot of people say that. On the media, they said, we gave you Barack Obama. We can't be racism because we allowed him to be president. Yeah, in 2019. In 2019, we still have, still people thinking with nonsense prejudice concerning people of a different skin pigmentation. And people, men, women, and children, still find themselves threatened and or die without due process at the hands of cops, which is why they kneel, and why our president calls them sons of bitches and think they should be fired. And on a side note of that, I know I'm on a tangent, but on a side note of that, I find it interesting about running through an article that Colin Kaepernick can't seem to get a job because perhaps President Trump is influencing and pressuring the bosses not to hire him. How fucking petty is that? I don't know what points he's scoring. Because Trump supporters understood that this guy was a scumbag. This is baked in. I don't know where the only way that you can say that there's any virtues with this guy is through your own personal imaginary invention, or how you want to prop up again your support for him because you don't want to be wrong. Because you can't be wrong in saying that you supported this guy, but he does all these horrible things, and I regret supporting this guy. Few people have done that. Some people have come out on record and done that. That's cool. But a lot of people, and that can happen on any side of the aisle, on any particular person that turns out to be foul, but because they're in your political persuasion, you don't want to admit to it, right? So what do most people do? What this guy does, you double down, you double down, you double down. And that's why you get these people who can't even look at the transcript and still defend him. A lot of the Senate Democrats, a lot of these Senate Republicans who go out and still defend him after the wake of the whistleblower and the Ukrainian call. And it turns out they didn't even read the whistleblower complaint, the 9-page one. They didn't read the 5-page readout of the transcript. They're saying, where's the quid pro quo? Where's the quid pro quo? When they didn't even read it. what else needs to be said on that is it's not just blind loyalty, it's blinders. There's evidence over here, right here, but blinder is on. I can't see that. The same goes over here. Can't see that. It's all straight ahead. It's all straight ahead. And it's interesting. You see the media is now picking up. The media seems to be pissed off, quite frankly, in the various shows when they have any one of either Trump's personnel, like Stephen Miller, on, or people in the administration like Mike Pompeo, or just his allies in the Congress or Senate. People in the media, including Fox News, is not taking their shit. It's just like no. There's one I saw recently with Chuck Todd and I think it was Senator Kennedy, I believe so, and Senator Kennedy, who's a Republican, was they're getting this back and forth upon conspiracies with the Bidens, and Chuck Todd was just like, no, you can't you're not gaslighting me, and he hit him back with point after point after point that's coming out of the transcript, and you see this guy, the senator, he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to say. He's like, the things that are thoroughly investigated. Who investigated it? The Ukrainians were saying, oh, really? We don't care. We're going to believe that. It's like, all right, you're not going to believe that, but you will believe that if they investigate the Bidens. It's interesting. It's nice in the news to find out that the Democrats are finally growing some teeth and nail and claws and maybe some balls. That's also nice. That they subpoenaed Rudy Giuliani. Half of the problems that Trump has in this issue, it has to come out of Rudy Giuliani's mouth, because every time he goes onto TV to try to defend him or try to push their narrative on the Bidens, his mouth just keeps going on and on and on. And on hostile medias to even friendly medias, he is making it worse for himself and for the president, and more like worse for himself. I mean, getting into that conversation with Chris Cuomo, saying that at first he didn't talk to the Ukrainians about the Bidens, and then 30 seconds, of course I talked to the Ukrainians about the Bidens. And then you and your media, you and your bias, blah, 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 blah. And Chris Cuomo, for me, always has this, like, deadpan, center mass, staring. And when he does a show, when he has people debating on either side, there's literally like a split screen where they're talking over here, but Chris just staring ahead. It has this look to him. It's really it's sometimes I find it kind of jarring, frankly. But he wasn't gonna take Giuliani's crap on that. Giuliani goes on to Fox, and he is on this like 4-person panel on Laura Ingram's show, and he's like telling like one of the other panelists, shut up, you're an idiot, shut up. Talking over him and so forth. Giuliani doesn't really do well with the media. It's a spectacular thing, and you go from here, and then stuff that happened like earlier, before this issue. I remember seeing one show where they were talking about something that he was that he had previously said, and he didn't say. He said he never said it, and then they rolled a clip of him, and he got all upset that they were showing a clip of him saying it. It's I don't know where reality is in all this with these people. Now, granted, Donald Trump doesn't live in our reality. That is pretty much, if you can make a proven fact out of that, that's a proven fact. He doesn't live in our reality because he lives in a reality where no one says no to him. He pays people to be around him to make sure they tell him he's right. They bolster his delusion of of how life exists around this man. So either he is orchestrating it, this fantasy and this fiction, or he's living in this fiction and fantasy. The people around him are even worse because they know better. And yet they reinforce this for their own purposes because they're sycophants, they're hangers on. You know, it was one of the noticeable things, especially in days when Omarosa was still with his administration, is that the people close to him who are not related to him, the people who have been with him for years, they 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 follow his narrative and they push his narrative because their livelihoods is attached to this man. It's not a matter of just being employer and employee, or you're just getting paid to offer sound advice or be an advocate. But no, you will be destroyed if you go against my reality. And the people who fight hardest for him don't seem to have like an independent agenda on their own. And I wonder how this impeachment inquiry will go, and how these people who are so diehards, how are they going to be treated when he's gone? There's no guarantee down here how the impeachment is going to go. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be, I believe, they'll pass it in the House, they'll get killed in the Senate, and I had been hesitant on going into impeachment pretty much for that reason, because it will hand over. It may. I was certain of this before, and I'm not so certain now, but before I said it would hand not only Donald Trump a victory and a perceived vindication that he can take into the election and tell people how he defeated the Democrats. They tried going after him with their witch hunts, and they couldn't do it because it was all bogus. Well, I'm not so certain about that anymore. Even if the Republicans, don't follow up with impeachment in the Senate, because I think there was a narrative that you could still control on the Democrat side in terms of impeachment. Even if they don't get him in the Senate, you can go and say that these people are protecting this corrupt president who is using his office and abusing his office for his own gains. You having foreign powers investigate his rivals. They can name. They'll go to the voting roll and name every person that says nay to impeachment, and then we'll tack Trump's name onto him, and that will be a lodestone, because they know that in 2018 that worked. In 2018, no matter how lukewarm some people think of how the midterms went, it was a slaughter in the House that went back to the Democrats. It wasn't really going to ever be anything in the Senate, because the Senate, there was too few seats that exchanged back and forth, and they picked up seats. But that's neither here nor there when it comes to that. It's still, the trend is still going. And there's already inklings of there being in the Republican Party, at least in terms of some rumor and some stuff that you should take with a grain of salt. But, people like Jeff Flake, they're saying that, with a secret ballot, a secret vote, there's 35 Republicans that would vote to impeach him. Now take 35 Republicans and all the Democrats, and that is impeachment in the Senate. If that is true. A lot of things can change between now and when we actually get to that point. So, segueing back, Rudy Giuliani is going to be subpoenaed, and he's now haying and hawing it on if he's actually going to cooperate. And I'm not surprised, because one of my disappointments in my own party, especially in the party that's controlling the House, is that they seem to pussyfoot over the concept of their own authority when it comes to being able to subpoena people to come and present themselves to testify, or giving them some consequences when they're not answering their questions. Because when you notice, a lot of these people, like Corey Lewandowski and various others, who exert a executive privilege that does not exist. See, when a president exerts executive privilege and exerts it for his people, then yeah, it's kosher that they can't testify because they're under privilege. However, the privilege has to be officially exacted. And when it's not, then there is no privilege. But for whatever reason, Congress allows these people to go and say, "Well, I can't answer that because it's executive privilege." What privilege? Well, my conversation with the president is exactly privilege. Oh, did he exert that privilege? Oh, no, but then see, that's the point where we go with these circular arguments, and then you have 2 to 3 hours of testimony of people just going, "No, I can't executive privilege. I can't do that executive privilege." No, no, that's when you threaten to hold them in contempt. And the thing is, when you threaten that, you back it up and you do it, and they're not doing it, or at least they weren't before. But again, they're developing teeth, they're developing claws, and some of them are developing balls. So perhaps instead of this back and forth bullshit that we saw with Corey Lewandowski's testimony, where pretty much he admits that that he has no obligation to tell the truth to the media involving Trump, and which is funny because he's hired by CNN. So you got a confirmed liar to be the Trump mouthpiece for CNN. Another side tangent is that I love how, CNN is supposed to be the one that has fake news, that CNN gets roundly bashed by Trump and pointed out by Trump and any of their people like Jim Acosta. They're bad people according to Trump. CNN has more Trump apologists, Trump splainers, and Trump minions that show up on their shows than MSN. They're given a platform to spin the Trump line, and their fake news that they're given a spot for people to listen to these mushrooms. Be that as it may. It's so much information that's gone in the past 24 hours. It is astonishing. As we found out yesterday through the media sources, that the Department of Justice, or the Department of Trump Justice, is going to intensify, their investigation of the Hillary Clinton's email probe. Okay. Which is why Barr and various others are globe-trotting around the world trying to dig up information, because Lord knows, we can't insource research with Americans. And that's why they're going and trying to have conversations with 130 of Hillary's prior associates on these emails. And one of those is added to the conspiracy theory of Ukraine, that, when Hillary Clinton made 30,000 emails disappear, apparently, and this goes with all information that you delete and you empty your recycle bin. No, it doesn't disappear into nothingness. No. They find themselves in a warehouse in Kiev. So yeah, they're going to intensify their probe, and this is the news that they want put out there. They want people to know this. My humble opinion on that is that all that was doing is to make Trump feel better about himself, since the headlines is and will be the Ukraine call, the whistleblower, and his impeachment. So they want to make the boss feel better about himself, so they're going to show that they're investigating Hillary too. It reminds me a few months ago when we're starting to see these congressional testimonies come out these meetings, that Lindsey Graham, Trump's #1 golf buddy and #1 senatorial sycophant, who just couldn't wait to jump on his bandwagon as soon as his buddy John McCain died. He comes out few months back when the congressional hearings were starting, and saying that he was going to use his power as the head of the judiciary in the Senate, which he is, to reopen and investigate Hillary Clinton. Now, the funny part about that is that is the only time we ever heard anything about it. That we had not heard an update or scheduled meetings of any Hillary Clinton associate or Hillary Clinton herself to be before the Senate Judiciary. I don't know, maybe because Hillary Clinton already went through that 9 or so times in various different investigations that went nowhere. Maybe also that she was able to hold her own and answer all the questions during an 11-hour congressional hearing led by Trey Gowdy. And they could not find anything. They did not move the needle. They did not uncover revelation. And that investigation also fell by the wayside. Imagine Trump sitting down for 11 hours. You know, that's cutting into executive time of watching Fox News. So yeah, it reminds me of Lindsey Graham saying that and that going nowhere. So the DOJ is going to do that. Okay, whatever. Do it. You know, it's an interesting thing where people are afraid of investigations. You know, Trump supporters, Trump defenders are so terrified of Trump being investigated that they're fearful that he could sit down with someone and be under oath because they know he's going to lie. You know how many times you see on the media, during the media, especially on Fox News, where one of the pundits or a Trump ally is urging the president, don't do it because it's a perjury trap. Yeah, it's a perjury trap because he's going to lie. It's an acknowledgement that he is a liar. You know, how clever do you have to be to trap him in a lie? He lies about the size of his crowd. Despite visual aids, he went and tried to get the National Park Service to say, no, his crowd was larger. Again, there's so much information, and it's so hard not to disappear in these tangents that I apparently am doing. But it's amazing. It's amazing with the time we live in. That this is a bad fiction on TV. You know? Can you imagine 4 years ago, 8 years ago, of us living through something like this? Of having our leaders go through foreign powers to investigate their rivals? To find themselves justifications to ban whole swaths of people because of a religious persuasion? Demonize people trying to seek asylum in our country, separating their children from their parents, keeping people in cages in depraved conditions? You thought that was happening in this shining city on the hill? I mean, we have a lot of sins in this country, no doubt. And some of this stuff that is happening now echoes back to times when we had internment camps. But, you know, we're supposed to learn from our mistakes, learn from the bad things that happen in our lives. We're supposed to try to improve ourselves, to understand that this is experience, that in the future we can look back on and say, no, we're not going to do that shit again, because that was evil, that was wrong. We're not going to do that. And yet there we are doing it. And we're still doing it because while we're distracted with Trump on Twitter being a racist asshole, we ignore the horrible things that could be doing underneath. That is still being done. And I don't know what it takes. What is left? What is left for anyone to continue to defend him to the death? I mean, from whatever their own livelihoods is attached to this man, or just, as I said, no one wants to be wrong. I don't know. And of course, all of this is stemming from a call he made on July 25th, which was around the time that Biden was super strong in the polls. Now, Biden has been, declining because unfortunately the man is declining mentally and physically. He's 76 years old. No harm, no foul, nothing wrong. But we gotta be honest on this. And the thing about all this is that this might, unfortunately for his legacy, this might prop him back up. I like Joe Biden. If it becomes a point where he's a nomination, I have no problem supporting him. But his time is past. I understand the reasons why he didn't run in 2016, but I think 2016 was going to be his last time. And judging by his debate performances, the last one was the strongest. However, at the end of the night, he veered off and stammered and just on a concept of reparations went down a tangent about just stuff that had nothing to do with reparations. And he would have a good legacy. He would still be a strong voice in the Democratic Party, a good endorsement if he stepped aside. But as I said in the previous videos, is that, despite what we see, there's a lot of people that still support him, and they'll prop up his numbers to keep him ahead or keep him afloat compared to the other people around. As we saw a few days ago, Elizabeth Warren was in the lead, at least in Iowa, for at least one or two polls. But I believe, this type of what's the word? Exposure, attention. This amount of attention that Joe Biden is getting from Trump's call and Trump rattling on about corruption with Joe Biden, that will inadvertently lead Biden to being ahead in the polls again. Because, when it comes down to it, no one likes a bully. And Trump is bullying Biden, or at least as well as he's capable of bullying anybody. And people are seeing this. They're seeing the most corrupt president in human history is trying to say that Uncle Joe is worse than him, that he was corrupt, that he took down a Ukrainian prosecutor to protect his son, when the facts made out that had nothing to do with anything. Joe's time is past. But because of this thing that's supposed to be negative, that's supposed to bring Joe Biden down, this is only going to prop him up. Especially with a more avid Democratic base. There's people in the race young enough and viable enough that they can come back from, if they dropped out now, they can come back later. As long as they make themselves a national name and make sure they are not far from people's minds the next 4 years or so, they can still be viable. You know, I like Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete is becoming one of is one in my mind one of the people I'm more impressed with. I like Pete Buttigieg. I like Kamala Harris. I like I like Elizabeth Warren. If Joe was nominated, I'll still support him. I'm going to support anyone who's nominated. And you know, again, another side tangent because I'm ranting, so I don't really have like a structure here. But one of my other things that annoys me that I'm seeing is we're already having this bullshit Bernie bro esque mentality on various people who are supporting various candidates and tearing down other Democratic candidates in order to prop up their candidate. All these people are good people. All these Democratic candidates are good people. You know, disagree with their policy, fine. Argue about that policy, fine, but don't tear them down. Don't demonize them. Because we have a national focus right now. We have a president of the United States under impeachment inquiry who through the transcript that he produced shows that he was pressuring another country to dig up dirt on a political rival. And he makes demonizing comments on Twitter. And he quotes nonsense from non-Christian pastors who pass themselves off as Christians, advocating that if he gets impeached that there should be civil war. One of the things that annoys me, that really gets me, especially in this whole situation that's going on with the whistleblower, to learn that Trump supporters are propping up money pretty much as a bounty to find out the identity of this man or this woman. Why does this bother me? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because there are people who support this man who have proven themselves not to be all there, that are just so supportive of the dancing bear that entertains them at rallies, that they have attempted and have committed violence in his name or in his motivations. So, break it down. From the people that commit violence at his rallies, from when Trump points to the media and says that they're the fake news, that they're the enemy of the people, and then someone goes around and smacks and punches and attacks a media cameraman at the Texas rally, or chokeslams or punches a protester. And then the guy who punches it looks in the camera, says the next time he comes, we may have to kill him. To the people that attacked the homeless man in Boston and beat him down and urinated on him because they said he was a legal immigrant, and Trump just said that they're just being patriotic. To the Coast Guard lieutenant that was stockpiling weapons because he was going to go and he was going to kill not only Trump's political rivals, but he was going to go after the people in the media that criticize him. Or that avid Trump supporter with his van decked out in Trump swag that was sending bombs through the mail, again, to Trump's political rivals in an attempt to kill them. To Patrick in El Paso that committed mass murder with his precious guns, within his manifesto echoing Trump's words on migrants and immigrants, illegal or otherwise, because he was going to go out and he drove 9 hours away from his home to El Paso and he wanted to kill Mexicans. These are the reasons why perhaps a whistleblower should be under federal protection already, since it turns out that, according to his lawyer, his or her lawyer, he the whistleblower is not quite under protection just yet, even though 60 Minutes stands by the story that he is. I would put him under lock and key and protect him and her's life and their families. And Trump wants to find out who this person is because he wants to meet his accuser. That's funny coming from someone who has dozens of people accusing him of sexual misconduct. And not counting his own involvement with the late lamented in hell Jeffrey Epstein. And one little story that the media doesn't really want to bring up, at least visually on camera. I've gone into that before. For your supporters, I ask you, of all the things he's done, what is the benefit in supporting him? Cui bono, who benefits? Who's benefiting from this? Are you benefiting from, like, the tax cuts that all he did was sign on the dotted line, but the Senate Republicans had to do the nuclear option in order to make the appear out of nowhere? Is it the judges? Is it is migrant policy of making sure they close every loophole of the asylum laws? Making sure that we don't hire any more judges to expedite any immigration cases? Try to make it acceptable that single-digit children must stand in court with no parents and no translators to hear cases as if they were adults in migrant cases? What is it? What is he doing that's making America great again? And when was it so great that we're going back to? Socially in its 50s? Financially in the go-go 80s? There was a police officer who, I'm thinking the article, I'm trying to remember which article. It was recently was released from the department that said something to the effect that Trump was the last best hope for white people. People debate on whether or not that President Trump is racist. My first YouTube video here was my thesis on whether he was a racist and or a white supremacist, because there is a bit of a difference in there. White supremacists are racist, but white supremacists are racist in the sense of they're trying to prop up their own race, or the whole race of people who have a peach skin pigmentation over that of people that don't. While real racists just are racist. They're not there to prop anybody up other than just their own hate and stereotypes and prejudice. I had suggested that he is racist from his past dealings, and I listed a number of instances on that. But I didn't think he was a white supremacist because I don't think he gives a shit about anybody, white or otherwise. He's not propping anybody else but Trump. So he may not be, but a lot of the people who are racist certainly are looking to him. David Duke David Duke supports everything he says and does. When Trump said there were good people on both sides of Charlotte, David Duke was like applying that. So, do you want to be on the side of somebody who gets love letters and support from people like Richard Spencer and David Duke? Is that the trade-off for what you want? Are you going to put boots on the ground and defend him on a civil war? Are you going to be so desperate to double down to make sure that you are not shown to be wrong and you're choosing and defending of him, that you negotiate your values in order to protect him, including religious values? Because certainly a number of religious, at least so-called religious people, have propped up Trump as some sort of divine figure now. The pastor that he got the quote for the Civil War went on Fox News and suggested that Christians that support Trump are morally superior than everybody else. What an arrogant and unchristian thing to say. Christ himself would not approve of such behavior of people that would follow him. This will be my last tangent on this, but in regards of this religious fervor, for me, I find it interesting that there is a separate subset of Christianity in the United States. And I'm not talking about your standard churches, Catholic or Protestant or whatever. But these people, especially in these mega church communities that just have this... they have this desire to garner political power and to side with political power and find, things negotiable in their political belief with their religious belief, that they'll support, whatever side gets, aligns with their political view, not necessarily the religious view. It is an interesting American religious concept. I think it should be its own sect, its own denomination within Christianity, this faux Christianity, that pay lip service and read passages that are highlighted in the Bible, but in terms of actually living where you're loving thy neighbor, treating everyone as a brother, being a good Samaritan to the stranger, they're doing anything but. And they'll support people that will allow them to be bigots on those that disagree with them or they disagree with. The people who they'll demonize women who exercise their choice. They will demonize the LGBTQ community. And uses their pulpit for political gain. The late great George Carlin, in I believe his 1988 HBO special, What Am I Doing in New Jersey, suggested that if back then, if church people were wanting to get into politics so badly, then those churches should get taxed. They should pay their admission like everyone else if they want to join the reindeer games. The grandfather of us all, George Carlin. I give him the sign of the cross and rest in peace, but he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in that, so never mind. All right. A lot I was rambling on about this, but there's certain certainties in this. What was in the transcript aligns with what is in the whistleblower complaint. And over this time, Trump has admitted pretty much to everything that was said and done in it, and still wants you to believe that he wasn't doing anything wrong. Probably in his Candyland reality, he wasn't doing anything wrong because he was doing for Trump. Because anything for Trump is always good for Trump. doesn't care about you. His tariffs, his tax cuts, what he promised coal miners, all the stuff that he wanted to glad hand you with to garner your support. And Mr. America First outsources his research to other countries. All right. As it stands, things are just changing and they're moving quickly. So I'm more likely going to be doing this again in a few days. So, but as of now, I bid you good morning. Thank you for listening to me ramble and rant incoherently. Because the ranter rants, and his urge to rant is rising. Have a good morning.